I did a video the other day of me riding in the field, and this happened mid-ride, cantering in a beautiful field, how quickly my horse changed. And it was so quick. That is how powerful this is. So us as females ignoring it, guess what, ladies? We can't ignore it. It happens, it's physiology. But what we can do is prepare ourselves better for it and understand what effect it's having on our horses. Has anyone else had that really awkward moment where you're mid-ride and your period starts? Or you're a little bit in fear that it might happen one day? Now, this isn't about embarrassment, shame, like this is reality that probably, actually most likely, many women are not talking about. And it's really odd because I get it, right? It's not the most comfortable thing to say. And it is so friggin' embarrassing when it happens because you're on a horse. For me, this happened probably at least 6 times, from being in a competition to training clinics to just riding my horse in a field and thinking, well, what do I do now? I can't exactly get off. And today I'm going to be teaching you exactly how I have learned why this is happening, but B, most importantly, how I can manage it and how potentially you can manage it if you relate to this. So this is in terms of what I call cycle sync riding and training. So basically understanding your cycle to the point that you can continue riding your horse, know when your period is going to start, and even if it catches you off guard, you can be prepared. I don't know about you, but for most of my ridden career, I've been told to just push through things, right? Just keep going. Just keep quiet about it. Toughen up. You know, if you fall back, get back on. And I get all that. But why are we maintaining that same perception when it comes to our bodies as females? And you know what's odd is that looking at the research around equestrianism and female versus male, it's majority women, female-dominated industry, and yet everything is set up for men. Now, this is not me being a feminist. This is me saying something has got to change, right? This is the reason I've actually taken time and written the Female Rider Code, which is a book that's coming out in 2026. If you want to know more information, comment below and I'll add you to the waitlist. You'll get bonus exclusive release. I've noticed everything from white breeches to saddles to even training. So by that I mean as a rider off your horse, how even gym equipment, everything is suited towards the male anatomy, how men move, how men function, which is usually on a constant 24-hour cycle. And ladies, we're not like that. And that's okay, because I secretly believe it's our superpower once we get to know about it. So more about that. Genuinely, when we understand our cycles, whether you're a young girl who's just started your period, or you're like me in your 30s and you've understood that, oh my gosh, I wish I knew this in my 20s, preparing my body now for the later years of perimenopause and going into menopause. When we have this knowledge, we can then understand, instead of living in a constant, unknowing, unexpected, deemed, don't talk about it, don't talk about periods, blood, don't talk about how you're feeling, the changes going on in your brain. Like, this is stopping. I truly believe that the knowledge is the power, and that coming together as women, we are 100% going to be able to help and support our bodies. Okay, let me get back to it. I've written something down here. So what I didn't realize back then in my cycle was how much my menstrual cycle, the changes in my weekly hormones, was affecting things like my strength in and out of the saddle, my reactions in and out of the saddle, my patience, my level of tolerance in and out of the saddle, and even how my horse was moving underneath me. And do you know what's mad? When I've been doing the research on cycle synced training in women, I've really come across a clear issue, which is that there's not much research on this in equestrian women. However, there is research, small, but there is some across other disciplines of sports. So cycling, running, rugby, there is more in these kind of mainstream sports when it comes to women with bra, like specific sports bra, underwear specific for menstrual cycle, understanding the difference in correctly fitting bras, the importance of pelvic floor. Like, this is coming, but it's not quite hit the equestrian field yet. So, good thing is that there is research out there that does show that during different stages of our menstrual cycle, we can feel different. So whether it's our coordination, whether it's our balance, whether it's our strength, cognitive function, like all of these things which as a rider we require, there is research black and white to show that the cycle changes affects how we show up. Now, we need to also remember that's the rider. Those of us that have horses know how incredibly sensitive these beings are, how they are hardwired to be sensitive for flight or fight, for survival. So we're not going to dumb our horses down. We need them to be reactive. We need them to be athletic for those of us that compete. And we're not going to stop that. So when we understand our cycle changes and when we understand the regulation and system of our horses, we can then understand, well, how can that not be linked, and how can horses not feel our changes, both physically and intellectually? So everything changed for me when I started to stop fighting my body and started to work on it. I noticed huge changes when it came to how I showed up with my treatments. I noticed my treatments as a chiropractor physio were actually better. I noticed that my riding was better because I didn't push myself every single day, which is impossible for anyone to maintain that level, right? You need to have like your peaks and your troughs in life. So I'm going to talk about 3 pillars that I did. By the way, if you haven't already, don't forget to give me a follow and subscribe. And any questions you have when it comes to menstrual cycle, female rider health, comment below and let me know. The first pillar that I worked on was nutrition. I went down the whole rabbit hole of protein. You know, nowadays it's like, you must eat protein. So I did it. What I was doing was eating the wrong kind of protein. So what I focused on was whole food protein instead of protein that was fake and that was full of absolute chemicals, stabilizers, emulsifiers, which I didn't know at the time because I was reading the label. So reading the label, believing that this must be genuine and that the food industry doesn't lie to you. It does. Spoiler alert, right? It's marketing, it's money, they do it. I was reading a book by Catherine, Dr. Catherine, and she was saying how the big food companies actually hire these people, these scientists called is it foodologists, who are specialized in basically changing our taste buds with what they put into the food that we ravenously eat and think we must have a motivation or discipline problem when we don't. Okay, so the core message when it comes to protein is that our cycle, females who have a cycle, it is affected by blood sugar, energy availability, recovery, and riders, we feel that. We feel when we have that crash. So if we're fatiguing halfway through a ride, A, how can that not affect our horse? But we physically feel it, right? I used to be someone who suffered with sugar cravings, crazy. Random snacking, I just could not stop snacking, which actually made me feel worse. My focus was worse, my energy was worse. That then led to things like brain fog, more tension, both in and out the saddle, tight hips, tight lower back. And this inconsistent eating and constant snacking, because I was someone who would skip my breakfast, thinking I wasn't hungry, didn't have time to eat, rely on coffee, get to about midday, have a lunch, feel exhausted after lunch because I just had some food. Energy would then crash, and then I'd overeat at dinner and just pig out because I'd be like, well, I missed breakfast, right? So I can surely have this. But what that did was that, coupled with then my menstrual cycle, obviously there's changes every week. So for some of us, it can be every few days. I noticed that at certain times of the month, I was like really short-tempered, very impatient, would get annoyed extremely easily, and would just overeat when it came to chocolate. Like, you buy me a bag of M&Ms and I would eat the whole thing. Like, I would eat until I was almost sick and then be like, I'll start again tomorrow. Like, that cycle is dangerous, and I lived in that for many, many years. So when I actually changed how I ate whole foods and how I then ate certain foods during my cycle, oh my God, my rides and how I showed up with the horses stopped feeling unpredictable, and I stopped this mental battle of like, just what's going on with me? Like, why am I so tired? Like all this questioning about what was wrong with me, when that all went away because I now had answers and I knew what to do about it. My body felt safer, which improved my relationship with my horse, improved the relationship with my clients' horses. Pillar 2. So the first thing I worked on was movement, was food, nutrition. Pillar 2 was movement. So I'm someone who's competed at a high level, whether it's, I've been a jockey, amateur jockey, and I've also done dressage up to Prix St. George. And when I was competing, we were so mentally busy traveling around Europe, things like that. But I always made sure that I did something for myself, my health. So training wise, whether it was doing some workouts, just 20 minutes at home, at my apartment, wherever I was, or whether it was when I was at the yard going to a gym. But again, some weeks I felt so flat and I'd get so annoyed at myself because I'd be like, why am I doing this exercise feeling so weak? And last week I was like hitting an awesome PB and felt like superwoman, like what was going on? And it sounds so simple when you say this because you have a menstrual cycle, but again, like the PTs, the guys were in the gym were all men. Like no one was really talking about, oh, so what stage of your cycle are you in? Like, how are you feeling today? And this is not to be like, let your emotions run your life. I don't believe that. That goes on to the third pillar in regulation. But actually it was more about understanding, okay, if I'm in this part of my cycle, how can I best prepare and fuel myself and manage my life to support my body instead of pushing through, than thinking you need to curl up in the bed and, you know, cry and eat chocolate ice cream, which is also okay. But it's just having that knowledge. So I've written some key points down, which is the first thing is I didn't have to train the same way every week of the month. Because of my strength coordination and my tolerance change with my cycle, which by the way, after 6 to 8 months of working on these 3 pillars, my cycle feels pretty steady. I can still feel when the changes are happening, but I don't have these severe fluctuations or severe crashes anymore. That's becoming so much more stable, and that is a superpower. And that's why as women, when we understand these 3 pillars, we understand our own body and we learn to get to the root cause and not just put plasters on it by having more painkillers or steroids or whatever it is, contraception, whatever it is that, you know, everyone's so different. You've got to find what works with you. Then you get to the root cause. You'll then have an easier menstrual cycle, which for me changed my entire life. It really, really did. So some of my best riding breakthroughs, whether it was training, learning new movements under saddle, whether it was learning new skills as a chiropractor, didn't actually come by doing more and pushing myself harder. It came from me choosing the right type of work where my body was. It sounds too simple. Like, I'm actually recording this going, is this too simple? But I was missing this for so many years. For 15 years I was missing this. So maybe it's not that simple. Number 3, pillar 3 is what I call brain gym stress management. If we ever think we're gonna live in a completely peaceful life with no stress, like whatever story that is, it's not true. It's understanding that how to build your stress tolerance and your level of resistance to stress. Now that doesn't mean that you need to keep pushing yourself harder and harder and harder, because again, I found that in my 20s I could do this a lot more, but in my 30s things are changing and I'm expecting it's going to be different in my 40s and 50s. So instead of treating my body like I am in my 20s or my teenage years, accepting where I am at 30, not as a weakness, but just understanding how my body's functioning at this age, how my stress levels is, what my cortisol is like. Cortisol for me, because of the different ways that I was choosing to manage my stress in what was happening in my life, actually meant that I was gaining weight, and I constantly felt inflamed, like my skin felt inflamed. I had bad adult acne, I had this stomach pouch developing, like back fat, bra fat, which is so uncomfortable if you're having to put on these tight bloody jackets for competition, that everything is like zipped in, and not everyone is the stick thin lean person. Like I'm quite muscly, I'm quite athletic type, and before I used to feel like it would make me self-conscious. Now after doing the work, understanding the gift that I have in being this body type, I'm using it to my advantage. Okay, so when it comes to stress management, I'm talking about things like how you breathe. Okay, I'm sure many of you have, and if you've not tried this, if you're feeling really tense or your horse feels tense in the arena, just actually stop, relax, obviously if it's safe, drop your reins and do a breathwork exercise. There's one here, I call it the box breath. Do a box breath exercise for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Feel how different your horse feels. It's so simple, right? Again, it's like, how can this be? This is so simple. It's free, anyone can do it. Breathing. It affects things like our diaphragm, our digestive system. It actually affects our muscles, how tight we are. And most importantly, when it comes to horses, all of those factors I've just mentioned actually come down into how your timing is. Because when you work with horses, and I've observed this for over 30 years, like you can have all of the knowledge, the strategy, the whatever it is, the skill, but if you don't have and recognize timing is so important with horses. It can determine whether you have a good session or a really frustrating session if you're not focused on your timing. So most of riders think it's a confidence issue, right? I need to be more confident. I was like that, and sometimes I still default to that because of the hard wiring of the brain. But horses actually respond very differently where you are and what state you are when you're with your horse. So I learned to regulate my nervous system differently across my cycle, and the horses noticed it. So the last 8 days of my cycle before I bleed, I really do notice a change in things like my energy, my timing with the horses, my coordination and my strength. And instead of pushing myself harder during those days, I now actually change the way I train. I slow down my training. I still ride, but I just lower the expectation. And it's incredible what it does to the training sessions, to the riding, even the one-to-one with the horses from the ground. When I work on my regulation and how I show up, it's incredible how much progress I'm still getting with the horses. And before it would be push through, fight it, don't give up, be tougher, like all of this. So 3 things I worked on: nutrition, movement, brain gym, stress management. All of these, by the way, I have written in the Female Rider Code. It comes out this year, 2026. I'm just editing it. I don't know about you, but I'm someone who's like a creator, but when it comes to editing things, I find it a lot harder. So I'm setting down the time and I am busy editing it. If you found this helpful, don't forget to follow, give me a subscribe. And if you want to send this to any other female rider that needs to hear this, please do. Let's spread the word and let's actually create this ripple effect within this industry. Any questions, just comment below.